This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to go over UFC, what is it, Vegas 98, Taira versus Royval, or Royval versus Taira. Give you my very quick, half-assed breakdown on these, 13 bout fights. Main event's going to be awesome. There's a lot of fights on here that are going to be hard to predict, and they're not necessarily the best fighters, but because of that, because they're matching them up so well, a lot of these matchups are going to be very, very close. So I'll give you my general ideas, and we'll see what I can come up with when it comes to like betting on this one. Maybe a lot of overs, maybe some unders, maybe don't go the distance, but very, very quickly, let's break down these fights. First fight of the night is going to be piece of shit. There we go. Dan Argueta versus Cody Haddon. For those of you who don't know, because you might be, I don't know, casual fans, but Cody Haddon just had a very impressive outing in Dana White Contender Series. He actually got a rear naked choke over a pretty good guy, and Billy Brand left hooked this motherfucker, choked him out. I'm very, very surprised that they're giving him Dan Argueta, because I'm actually going to take Dan Argueta here as a dog. He's plus 155. Come back on Cody is minus 185. It's a little bit of two things. The Dana White Contender Series fade, because, the shiny new object versus the guy who's been there, the reliable. Like, I'm going to make a car example here. I'm looking for a new car because rats/mice ate my fucking, what do you call that shit? My cables. I forgot what they call that shit. But anyways, I'm looking for a new car. And I can go with the new, like, say, for example, 2023, 2024 Kia Forte, which is brand new. It does what you need it to do, backup camera, but it's a piece of shit once you ride it out for a few fucking miles. Or you can get the dependable 1996 Honda Civic with like 200,000 miles for like $1,000, which that's how I see Dan Argueta. Dan Argueta's going to want to get it to the ground, and he's going to want to control him there. Cody, I mean, he's very good. He's very good with the hands. I think his taekwondo is very good. He's a guy that I actually, looking into him, I respect a bit more. Although Steve Erceg essentially clowned him by taking him down pretty easily. He was doing pretty well against Steve, and I still hold Steve in high regard. The thing about Cody's that he's been fighting more so exclusively in the Australian scene, and there's not a whole ton of high-level grapplers like Dan Argueta that are just going to try to take you down, hold you down, and ride you out. You should not count him out. I think he's at plus 155 now. I think as long as he doesn't get knocked out or choked out, Dan's going to win this one by just relentlessly bullying this kid. He's 26 years old. I think it's a good learning lesson. If he can pass this lesson of Dan Argueta, I'd be very impressed by him. I actually faded Matsumoto. Similar reasons, but Matsumoto pulled it out. I think Dan was executing what I thought was going to be the perfect plan of just kind of bullying him, getting him to the ground, and doing nothing but that. And some of these fighters haven't really experienced a guy that can do that to you and hold you down. Prison, RIP, we'll talk about that guy later in Abdul. But I think if you get a guy like Dan Argueta who's got a one-track mind, if I'm going to take this guy down, hold him down because I need a UFC win. He's winless in his last 3 fights. And, not to his... it's not his fault that, Ronnie Lawrence tapped a couple times and then he bitched about that. And then it's really not his fault that, Miles Johns should have been a loss, obviously, but Miles Johns popped for, I don't know, Adderall or some bullshit. But his last fight against Gene, I think that was not necessarily a good sign of him evolving, but it's a good sign of what he can bring to the table in this matchup here. Cody Haddon, great striker. I like the fact that he didn't just learn taekwondo like a bitch, and he actually learned boxing, and it showed very well against Billy, who's got some pretty good boxing. So I'm going to go with Dan Argueta by a decision here. I think he's just going to do whatever it takes to get the win. And at plus odds, I'll take a shot on the more established, Honda Civic that is Dan Argueta. Next bet, we've got Chris Barnett versus Junior Tafa. I'm going to go with Tafa by knockout in the first, I will say, round or 2 rounds. Barnett, he is 38 years old. I like Chris, right? There's nothing not to like about Chris. He's the ultimate underdog at heavyweight. Can take an ass whooping. He's got also a taekwondo background. He's got a jiu-jitsu background as well. I don't know what his belt is, but I know he's been grappling for a long time. He's a big fat boy at plus 300. You can take the shot if you just want to take the shot, but for me, it's going to be Tafa. I think his takedown defense has improved. Obviously, his grappling looked like dog shit in his last fight, but that was against a monster in literally the clean monster and Valentine Walker. And I feel as if at this point, if he cannot get the victory over Chris Barnett, who he's there to get hit, you keep him on the outside, you can snipe him. You're the more athletic guy. Your takedown defense has gotten better. Somewhat of your get-ups have gotten better. Just stuff the takedowns enough to land on Chris, and you can knock him out. I'm going to say in the first round, I love Chris a lot. You know, he has pulled it out of his ass on multiple occasions. You can't hate a guy for that, even if you faded him for obvious reasons. You look at him. I actually picked him against John Vellante, I believe. For sure, I bet against John Vellante in that one. And literally, spinning heel kick. He did a spinning heel kick. Then he does a what do you call that? An earthquake tsunami fucking slam on the ground. Like, you can't hate on that guy. So I'm rooting for Chris because that bullshit antics from Junior the last time left a sour taste in my mouth. But wallet-wise, if I had to, I have to go with Junior Tafa by knockout here. Next bout, we've got Nico Price versus Themba Gorimbo. I just found out that Themba just abandoned his boys at MMA Masters to leave to another gym. But he's minus 280 here against Nico Price, who's plus 225. It's hard to go against Themba. I think he can get the knockout here against Nico, who's been knocked out multiple times. He has the wrestling advantage here to an extent, and what I mean is that he's more willing to engage in that grappling and grinding out, which is going to benefit Themba. That's really what he likes to do, just implement the grappling. But if he decides to go for a knockout, I think he can hurt Nico. Nico, obviously, he is not a man you want to underestimate. Like in his last fight against a very short notice pudgy bastard in Alex Morono, he proved that, like, hey, I've been really working on other facets of my game, mainly the wrestling, and that being because his chin has kind of been a little wonky as of late. But here, I think Themba, if he doesn't get a knockout, he's going to grind this out to a decision. Nico, you know, he's a great fighter, man. Like, you look at his past tape, he had great fights, but you can see even at 35, he's not super old, but he is definitely showing wear and tear and aging. And good for him, man. He's got like 40 kids, so I'm going to go with Themba Gorimbo. You know, with The Rock backing him, it's hard to really pick against him, so I've got Themba by, I'm going to say decision to be safe. Next bout, JSP, Jonathan Pearce versus Pat Sabatini. Pat Sabatini is the dog here, which is funny. He's a dog, but he's not really a dog. He is a plus 110. Comeback on Jonathan Pearce is minus 135. I got Pearce by knockout, and although Pearce does not get knockouts, Pat Sabatini... And if you've ever heard the term Pat Sabatini, trademark, baby. Pat Sabatini, he likes to wrap you up like a Drutini. Great wrestler. Here's the thing about Pat. Pat's got great credentials, great wrestler, great jiu-jitsu. This dude, on a straight grappling matchup, he's going to tie up Jonathan Pearce worse than what, God, I got to look him up. I see his fucking gremlin face here. Damn it. I know the name of the fighter that beat his ass at 155, but I cannot picture him. I can't picture the name. It's because my brain is filled with other useless facts. I lose the fact that Joe Lozon is the name of the guy who twisted him up like a pretzel and big brothered his ass. But when it comes to MMA bout, Jonathan Pearce, just as relentless with the grappling. I think he's more gritty. I mean, when I looked back and I saw that fight against him and David Onama, which is a fucking hard fight to find if you don't have Fight Pass. But when you're seeing his fight with Onama, yeah, he did kind of fight like a bitch at a certain point, but he went for those takedowns, he controlled them, but it's really hard to control a freak like Onama, genetic freak athlete. He would spin out of everything, and Jonathan Pearce was just not used to that kind of wrestler / athletic ability / power from Onama. And at the third round, when he was tired and he just said, fuck it, he went to war with Onama, started going at it and landing on him. He has a good chin. He can take these shots. I think the biggest threat is going to be Sabatini maybe going for submissions because he is a very good artist, submission artist, black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's solid, man. If he had a chin, this dude could take it far, man. Like, he's such a good fighter, but that chin is something I cannot trust. I think Jonathan Pearce throws a kick up the middle, hurts him, he can finish him. I mean, he's lost to, I don't want to say lesser competition, because his two losses in the UFC are to Diego Lopez, probably number one contender, but Damon Jackson kicking you in the mouth and finishing you like that, I think Jonathan Pearce can do that. I think he's more gritty. I just got him by knockout. I think if Pat Sabatini does win this, and if you do take him, I think he's going to make it look easy, but it really depends on Jonathan Pearce looking really bad, meaning his wrestling is so shit that you would never want to pick him against anyone ever again, wrestling-wise. I don't see that happening here. So I got to go with Jonathan Pearce by knockout, but I do know Pat Sabatini, if his chin holds up, he is a major threat to just kind of grapple fuck Jonathan Pearce. He's that much better, I think, in the pure grappling. Next bout, we've got a newcomer here against CJ Vergara. Vergara plus 210, and we've got Razaman Temirov. So Temirov here, I had to do some research on him. He's a striker, minus 265 from the Uzbekistani. Big power guy. I wanted to see how we can fade this guy, but ultimately I couldn't find a reason to fade him. I have to go with Temirov. Ultimately, I do think he can get the knockout over CJ Vergara, but I think it's going to be a decision. CJ's a dog. He can definitely make this a dog fight, but when it comes to the striking, he does throw major power all the time, big right hands, spinning back kicks. He wants to keep it on the feet. He has pretty good takedown defense and athleticism to kind of keep it on the feet. I do think when he meets a relentless grappler, it's going to be a much easier time fading him. I think CJ is the more well-rounded of the two. The only downside with that is that just because you're more well-rounded doesn't mean you're going to be the better fighter. I think on the feet, Razaman is going to have the bigger moments, the harder shots. I do think that he can get hurt. I did see him get hurt in a fight just recently against Soya in Risen. He did get hurt, but I like what I've seen from the guy. I think he's going to be an exciting fighter, but not something that I'm going to be like, oh my God, this guy's going to be champion. I do see some holes there that, you know, if you push him enough because he's so explosive, he can get tired. CJ, as much as I like the guy, I think at this point, the experiment with the guy is just kind of failing. He's not really showing too much in the sense of like the wow factor. He's having kind of whatever fights. His last fight with Almabayev, obviously he's going to get taken down. He's going to get out grappled. It's kind of an easy fade for him. But I thought he lost the fight against Vinicius Salvador. It was that close that I thought he could have lost it. Ultimately, I haven't necessarily like gone back and rewatched frame by frame, but just kind of watching it, I'm like, I don't know if he won it. The Lacerda fight, you know, I'm going to give him credit for that. When he showed some heart, he got hit in a very awkward way in the temple with that spinning heel kick, and he survived. But man, had it been any other ref, I do think they would have stopped it. It was a rough look for him. And if Razaman's can hit him just cleanly and wobble him, they might be able to just call it an early night. But if it is just a back and forth where, you know, Vergara does show some grit, I think it's going to be the bigger shots of Razaman that's going to win them the fights. I'm going to go with him by a decision. Next bout, we've got Chidi Njokuani. Not shitty Njokuani. Well, depends on if he makes weight at 170 versus Jared Knight trained Gooden. Gooden, another guy, he has to make weight, which is funny because like if you're betting on which one is going to make weight, I would feel more comfortable in Chidi, the guy who's fought like way the fuck up, 185. He's a huge man, 6'3". Jared Gooden is just, he struggles to make weight, and you'll hear stuff about like, yeah, he didn't necessarily miss weight, he just had a illness, but he's kind of a habitual weight misser. He's got a great chin. He's very durable, but he just doesn't necessarily show that he has what it takes to kind of stay in the UFC. He's got a chance here to knock out Chidi if Chidi just fights like an idiot, and he's done that, right? But his last fight, although not the most exciting against Reese McKee, he did show some good stuff there. He showed that he can pace himself, he can use his length, and I think he can do that here against Jared Gooden. I think he can definitely. Here's my thought on Chidi. I think he's going to try to extend it out to a decision, not to gas himself out, to just keep it very technical, not go out of his way to gas himself out trying to get a finish. But if it comes along the way, I think he can get it. If he does kind of go a little full, you know what? That's where Jared Gooden can knock him the fuck out. And Jared, he's not the most clean striker, but he can definitely put your lights out. He can definitely hit hard. And I hate to say it, but he can put the quit in Chidi. But ultimately, I do think it's going to be kind of like over 1.5. It'll be a slower pace. It really depends on how Jared looks. If Jared misses weight and he still takes the fight, like he just misses weight, looks shit, he might want to come out here and try to get the fight over with, which is going to kind of change perception of the fight. But if they both make weight, I think if they both look like they're not at death's door, I think it's Chidi going to kind of slow down the fight, use his Muay Thai, even try to get some takedowns on Jared and control him. Show that he is just more than a kickboxer, and I think that's what he's kind of trending to do. So I'm going to go with a kind of a lackluster fight for Chitty because, you know, if he does fight to his full potential, he can either get a knockout or get tired and get finished. So Chitty by decision for me. Next bout, we've got, as aforementioned, the you-know-what, apist in Abdul Razak Al-Hassan. He is minus 150 here. And come back on Josh Fremd is plus 125. So if you really believe that Josh Fremd sucks ass, he should be, what, plus 300 here, maybe higher. Abdul is supposed to come in here and knock him out. The thing about Abdul is that you can't trust the guy. We saw what he did last time against a quitter in Cody Brundage. He gave him the out to quit. Josh won't do that for sure. If he gets hit in the back of the head, he's going to, you know, oh, my head hurts, but let's go. I can say that about the big yins here in Josh Fremd, who's God, he just screams. He just screams that he's like a big old Steelers fan because he's from whatever, Pittsburgh. But Josh Fremd, I'm going to be contrarian here because I think a lot of people are going to be picking Abdul because, like, he's 38 years old. He's still shown that he has it. He still has power. He can still go. He still hits hard. But I think if Josh Fremd fights a smarter fight, he can extend the fight a little bit longer, kind of keep him from the outside, make this a very annoying fight for Abdul, where Josh can win the fight as long as he doesn't get knocked out. So I'm going to play contrarian here. I'm going to take Josh by a decision. I mean, Josh to me is a guy that if he mixes everything up well, meaning if he strikes with him for a bit, stays on the outside, then mixes in takedowns, I think he could win this fight easily. I think he is well-rounded, and typically in fights where he mixes in takedowns is when he has the most success here. And Abdul, you know, having a judo background, he's just not the same guy, right? If you tire him out with wrestling, he will exhaust himself. His real path to victory is getting the knockout as soon as possible, which he might try here, and he might succeed. But to me, I think Josh, the guy was somewhat a favorite against his last opponent in, what's that doofus's name, Petrosky. And I remember thinking, like, Petrosky's going to just lay on him. Like, I don't understand, like, who do you think Josh is? Like, Josh is a guy who needs to wrestle, and he's not going to be able to out-wrestle Petrosky here. And I know a lot of people had Josh to win that fight. And I'm just curious, are we going to jump off the Josh is good enough kind of train? He's pretty damn mid, but, you know, he's fighting a 38-year-old guy, 39, holy shit, 39-year-old Abdul Razak Al-Hassan that I don't think his durability is there. I don't think his cardio is going to be there. He's still very dangerous. And, yeah, you know, I think Josh can definitely weasel his way to a pretty lackluster decision to win the fight. But, yeah, Abdul is a guy that you cannot trust. Like, he gave Cody an out, and Cody really, really tried to take it. He's like, oh, my back of my head, oh no. He really tried to milk it to get that DQ. He's like, another payday for Cody Brundage. Like, it's like, hey, if I bring home money, my wife might actually let me sleep in the same bed tonight. That'd be cool. So I don't blame Cody. You know, if I was in his position, I probably would have blown my brains out. But in his position, I understand to an extent that, you know, gets cold at night. Next bout, D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez versus Alex Morono. Morono, the great white supremacist, versus Daniel Rodriguez. Automatically, it's going to be Daniel losing to Morono. But yeah, plus 170 on Morono. Come back on D-Rod minus 205. D-Rod's a guy, again, both these guys can't be trusted. This is the main card opener? Nah, it's like the second fight. So D-Rod, big guy, big power at 170. You know, he hasn't looked great, but look at his last opponents. Like Neil Magny submitted him. You know, Machado Gary, I understand that one. Kelvin Gastelum, I understand that one. It's really Morono. Is he going to get knocked out, or is he going to push a awkward pace against Daniel Rodriguez and kind of like outpoint him? Because we know that Alex Morono is very awkward. He's pretty hard to fight, to be honest. You know, if you're not prepared for him and if you're slow, he will be this faster guy between him and Daniel, who's more of a tank. It's just, to me, I think the power eventually will start catching up to Morono. I think the boxing of Daniel is going to be there. The slight reach advantage is going to be there. And typically anytime Daniel fights anyone with really heavy hands that he can't necessarily bully, it turns out to be that he gets knocked out. So I do have to go with Daniel Rodriguez versus Morono. Daniel winning this one by knockout. I'm going to say like later, round number 2 or 3. Morono does slow down. He uses a lot of energy. And, you know, it's a tough look for Morono. I think he is, at this point, going to be like the jobber to the stars, but he always puts up good fights. So this could be a spot where Morono makes a comeback here where he looks good. He looks every bit of the Morono that we've seen in the past. But there was a brief period where Morono was just like, oh man, like he looks like he could maybe enter the top, 15 or something. Not necessarily like, oh my God, he's so impressive, but like he kind of sneaks his way in there. You know what I mean? He beats like a top guy by a weird decision because he didn't get knocked out in the third. But ultimately, I think D-Rod's going to eventually catch him. But this is a fight between two kind of broken toys, so play it at your risk here. Next bout, we've got Corey McKenna versus Julia Polastri. The greatest, man, I just love to be in between these two. People give me shit because I like Corey McKenna. I saw some pictures of her wearing like makeup and not in like fight garb and her glasses. I'm like, oh, okay. Like you would make a very lovely, lovely like grandma for my children, because like she just has that like decent factor. I'm like, okay, like I can live with this for the rest of my life. Like a spot of tea for me. Yes, please. Thank you, Corey. But Poppins here, she's plus 125 against Julia Polastri. Now for Polastri's the type of girl that would like choke me and slap me. And I'd be like, okay. But she's cute. She's got like, I'm not going to talk too much about their like fighting abilities, but she's got like acne, which I've heard from the streets, right? Black Twitter told me that girls with acne are usually like freaks. And I've never really like been with a girl with acne like that. I've been with freaks, but not with girls with acne. So I cannot confirm that. If you happen to know, let me know. But, she's got it. I like them both, right? I like them both for two different reasons. Polastri, I think she shows signs of brilliance at times. But minus 150, I don't think so. Just because she went pretty close with Josephine Knudsen, who a lot of people were high on. Knudsen, to me, pulled a stunt even though she won that fight. I think she showed lack of ground game. Polastri just kind of made her presence known. She just did things to do them, and she ended up having success and nearly winning a fight against a pretty significant favorite against McKenna. I think McKenna is the more technical striker of the two. Polastri, she hits hard, right? Like I like her a lot. I think she can come out here and like bulldoze, run through girls like a mini sexier version of Vanderlei Silva. Maybe not as sexy, but still. I like Polastri, but in this spot, I think Corey McKenna, I think she can get the takedowns. She can control on the ground. She can definitely strike with her more efficiently, but the threat of the takedown being there, I think I'll take a shot on McKenna to win this one by a decision. It could get some pretty hairy there, but like what I really liked about McKenna, even though she tapped out like 5 times to Amarin, is the fact that she tapped out 5 times to Amarin and she still tried to fight. Like she really did try to fight out of that armbar. It was not the smartest thing to take her to the ground, but I can give her props for thinking, hey, I can take you down. She was controlling her for a bit, but ultimately she did succumb to the multi-level black belt. So props to McKenna. Ultimately a boneheaded move, and I expect her to learn from that. Against Polastri, she does have good jiu-jitsu, but not to that caliber. I think she can lay on top of her for 3 rounds. Oh, yeah. Next bout, we've got Grant Dawson versus Rafa Garcia. I've got Dawson here to win a boring-ass decision. I think Garcia can get out-wrestled. He's got the better striking. We know Dawson's got a pretty whack chin. Oh, man. He's got a whack chin with whack sauce on it. Minus 400 for Dawson is ridiculous, is what I was going to say. Plus 300 for Garcia. That is also a little like, if you expect Garcia to come out here and maybe knock out Dawson, maybe take a shot on it. I think he can be competitive with him early, but ultimately I think Dawson's going to leg kick, takedown, back control. So I've got Dawson to win this one by decision. Next bout, I've talked about this one before, Brad Tavares versus Jung Young Park. Let me tell you, minus 170 Jung Young Park. I love Jung Young Park for what he did to Duraev. Like he is going to be on my Mount Rushmore of like, fuck you fighters, right? There's that one. There's like obviously Poatan with his like fuck you to his opponents after he's just knocked them out. I love that. But him dancing on the corpse of a very heartbroken Duraev just because I fucking hate Duraev. I like Jung Young Park. I like him more when he can definitely mix in takedowns. And here with Brad Tavares, I know Brad's old. I know he's 36. He's getting up there in age. He's been knocked out multiple times. I think he can still hang with the mid-level guys in the division. And I do see Jung Young Park as kind of like a top mid-level guy, kind of breaking into that possible top 20, top 15 potentially. But there's just so many ways I can see him losing where it could be that he gets outstruck by Brad Tavares. He goes for takedowns. He stuffs him. Brad kind of circles around, rinses and repeats. So I do like Brad here. The more time progresses, had this been the original scheduled time, which let me check, because I know they were scheduled at one point and one of them pulled out. I think it was Brad. Let's check it here. And this is the co-main. Oh, okay. Young Park. This was back in July. Park not medically cleared is what would happen here. So at that point, I think he definitely would have won here. It does get a little bit closer. I don't necessarily say I'm going to bet on Brad. I might end up doing it like maybe day of live betting if I get a little, curious. But as much as I like the Iron Turtle, for sure, if you're confident in him, go for it. Like, I understand he's slightly younger. I like his boxing. I like how patient he is, but Brad Tavares, he's been around he's fought the champions, he fought Al-Hassan, he fought Duplessis, never got finished by either of those two. He's a tough guy. It's just that I don't know if Jung Young Park has that kind of power, and I also don't think Jung Young Park has the ability to take him down. If Brad Tavares is on point, I think he can definitely win this one, but beware, I've lost money thinking that Brad Tavares could win. Last time I lost money on him was against, Duplessis, where he was just bum rushing him, just throwing robot punches. Like, if you ever played, what is it called? Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. I just remember when I was a kid, fucking Jax throwing like robot punches, like blah. That's how I fucking saw Duplessis winning that fight. So, but still, he's the champ and he's the best of us all. So I'll go with Tavares right now by decision. And then main event, flyweight. This could really dictate if either one of them, maybe not Royval, he's already fought for the title, but if Taira gets this, I think he's going to definitely get a title shot. 16-0 minus 200 against Royval. RawDawg plus 165. I got to state, because I'm going to pick Taira, and I'm going to explain why. But before I do that, I got to say, it pains me because I do love Royval. Royval is the RawDawg. Like, he's made me money in the past. It's just, I have to be realistic about what my expectations are of him. Like, I made money on him in his last fight against Morono because he just threw a ton of volume. I picked him to beat Pantoja, but there were some things there against Pantoja. I picked him to win against Nicolau. He knocks him the fuck out. This guy will perpetually make you money if you underestimate him. But the RawDawg, man, I got stories I can say, but I've already said them a lot. But like, this is a guy that I'd love to meet. I'd love to shake his fucking hand. I'd love to get an autograph from him, because of his fighting style. Is just goes balls to the wall, not afraid to get taken down, nasty jiu-jitsu, will put volume on you. He doesn't give a shit. The problem is when he does that, he is there to get hit sometimes. He gets dropped. And as much as his jiu-jitsu is very good, I can see him getting subbed by the technical mastery that is Tatsuro Taira. There are some questions I have about Taira. His last fight against Perez, it wasn't looking necessarily great, but he ultimately got it where it needed to go. And he handled him devastatingly. Like, whether he intended to destroy his knee forever or not, it was still a win. But when this guy gets you to the ground, yes, he's had some issues where he might get caught in a guillotine or something, but ultimately I do think that the guy is probably the better of the two grapplers. When I say he's a generational talent, like, this guy, I think his striking is going to be a little cleaner than Royval's, but there's a chance he could lose via the volume. His cardio hasn't necessarily been tested for 5 rounds, but I do think that this guy has what it takes to contend for the title. Like, the guy has power in his hands. On top of that, he's got very good jiu-jitsu and control. That's the main thing. He can control the fight. Like, I love Royval for his willingness to just go for a fucking sub willy-nilly, and most of the time he gets it right. But with Taira, he will slow things down. He will control before he goes for the submission. So, position before submission, as like my bedroom life. Position before submission, before she comes in with the thing. Wait, who was that? Oh yeah, Juliana Pena and fucking Raquel Pennington. I forgot to talk about that, but very quickly, for last week, I only had one bet, 1 unit bet on Aldo. He lost. It was what it was. Made it back with live betting, but I was so I don't care. Fuck that unit that I lost. It didn't matter because Raquel Pennington lost. that made me so happy. I'm like, fuck it. Like, I don't give a shit about this money. Like, it's worth it if I had to donate to the universe, to the casinos for Juliana Pena to become champ, aka Pennington to not be champ. Very happy about that. But when it comes back to Taira, if this guy is measured, right, if he fights smart, knowing that Royval is going to come forward, there are going to be chances for him to go for takedowns, double legs, get him to the ground, control him. It's not going to be easy because Royval is going to squirm and try to like throw up submissions. But Taira, I think he has the power advantage. I think he's got the wrestling advantage. Maybe the submission advantage. I'm not sure because the creativity of Royval is going to be there. It's going to be a fun fight. I really am hoping that this line is a lot closer so we get to, on paper, it looks very close. I want it to be a close fight. That's why I'm not going to bet this fight. I want it to be a back and forth scramble rama of these two guys going back and forth. Taira gets his back taken. He reverses, gets on top, switches over to side control, puts him in a scarf hold or some shit. Like, I want to see that grappling, like, beauty going on. So for me, the main reason I'm going to go with Taira is it's pretty simple, right? Brandon Royval, if y'all don't know, he's Mexican, he's La Raza. And tell me, exclusively, what has Taira been doing in the UFC? He's been handling these fucking Los Vatos like nothing. Alex Perez destroyed his knee. Carlos Hernandez knocked him the fuck out. Edgar Chaira's decision, the shit out of him, nearly got submitted, mind you, but still, destroyed Aguilar. Like, CJ Vergara destroyed him submission. The only one that, Carlos Candelario, he did beat him, but he's Puerto Rican, I believe, so he didn't finish him. Ultimately, I think he continues this destructive path of just eating up these Mexicans, so I'm going to go with Taira to win this one. I'm actually going to go by a submission in round number 3. I think he's going to slow down the fight. He's going to keep taking him down. He's going to, avoid the onslaught of Royval, which is going to be awesome, man. Like, I'm going to be rooting for him to get these subs, and I hope he does. But ultimately, I do think that if Taira fights smart, because when you see what he does to these guys, he controls them like a fucking G. I think he's the only guy that can really contend right now with the champ Pantoja. Maybe not necessarily beat him, but I think he can definitely contend. Very similar to like Usyk, but I got to go with Taira on this one. It pains me to say because I do love Royval a lot. Hopefully he does not see this. He won't see this shit, but if he does, hopefully he doesn't try to like beat my ass. Say hi to your aunt for me, Royval. But yeah, again, Johnny TigerBomb MMA. Let me switch over the image here so it looks a little bit more official. Where the fuck are you? There you go. Johnny TigerBomb MMA. I will see you next week.